Hey guys, this is Paul from GIJOBURG, and I got a bit of a special review, a covert ops mission if you will. I got sent a very cool figure by my good friend Jim Godfrey, and today I'm going to give it a once over. So let's check it out. It is of course the Ammobot by World Peacekeepers. Yep, couldn't fit the packaging in this shot. So here's the exclusive packaging shot in 3, 2, 1. Pretty cool, huh? And here he is out of the box. So what does he come with? Well, this very cool looking sniper rifle with removable stand. Yay! This what I believe is an ammo box. This thing is either an ammo feed or some kind of radome system, because he's a commander type. This very cool handgun. The holster for that handgun, and a backpack connection point for the weapons. Take a look at some of his articulation. The head is pretty standard, left, right, up, down, and very cool ball joint there on the shoulders. I'm loving it, and the joints are quite tight. Revoltic style joint there for the elbow, which gives some supreme movement, and a great wrist swivel, so that's always a win in my book. Torso swivel, ab crunch, yay, those are always great things to have. And this really interesting knee joint, which is ratcheted, and it gives quite a satisfying click when you move it. Foot, not so much, but the knee is awesome. Okay, there's the back port and the leg ports for the accessories. This fantastic detail at the bottom of the foot, which I really dig. And this thing's got some very cool hip articulation. So it's very much what you expect from a modern era figure, but it's handled in a different way, and I quite dig what they've done there. You can't get the splits out of him, but you get some really great forward and back movement. Plus it's got this soft kind of gummy plastic on the upper thigh there, which I like. I think it's quite brave for them to do. It allows articulation, but also keeps the aesthetic intact. And those big feet, sadly you're not getting this guy into a vehicle, but that's because he is a vehicle. Okay, I'm gonna pop on some of these accessories now. So something to note, a lot of the times with sort of modular figures, one of the pet peeves is that you plug these things into them, and then the stuff falls out, and it's really annoying. These guys have done a good job of making sure that all of the things that plug into the Ammobot stay there. They have quite a good snug fit, and they don't wiggle or wobble or whatever's. But take some care in plugging them in. I'm pretty sure it's easy to break some of the pegs, especially on the sort of leg mounted or lower leg mounted accessories. Like that ammo box, that's something I don't really want to pull off too often. I want to just sort of keep it there. Not that it's going to fall out, it's just I don't want to break the pegs. The paint apps. They are minimal, but they are very loosely applied and definitely need a bit of TLC to really make this figure shine. The Ammobot has fantastic sculpted detail, however it does get lost and definitely needs a wash to bring it out. Now this could be seen as a pro and a con. A pro for me because that kind of thing is fun to do, but a con for somebody who doesn't really want to put in that extra effort. The joints. They are great because they offer a wide range of articulation, but they are fragile, so please be careful. And my least favorite joint are the foot joints. They could have been a lot more interesting considering how well the knee and elbow joints were done. I just feel that the feet are the weakest articulated point in the whole toy. Not in terms of their fragility, but more a case of their movability. The gun holster. Wow. I really hate that thing. It looks cool, the gun looks cool, but it's really difficult to get the gun in there, and it keeps falling out, so it's definitely gonna need a bit of sticky tack or blue tack to keep it in there. It's really sad because everything else fits so snugly that this really stands out as a serious flaw. So here's the Ammobot stacked up against other 3/3/4 inch and 4-inch toys in your collection. Stalker will be representing modern era G.I. Joe. And as you can see, they're pretty much the same size and they seem to suit the aesthetic quite well. They look pretty good next to vintage guys, which is always a bonus, but I wouldn't personally mesh them. And then we have G.I. Joe's Star Brigade. Now I think the Ammobot is a great foundation to build your own Star Brigade G.I. Joe customs. And the rundown: great articulation, somewhat fragile, not the best paint apps, really awesome gear, decent price point, definitely something you should pick up in store and not online in my opinion, and it makes for a lot of fun as a project. If you want to do some customizing, practice your weathering, or any of those fun things, I think these are the way to go. And did somebody say customizing? Well, here we go. Hey guys, welcome to my first official G.I. Joburg and YouTube tutorial. We're going to do Paul's one-shot technique to make your Ammobot look 150% cooler. So we're going to start with a wash, and then we're going to move on to doing some chipping and weathering effects on the toy itself. Now this is going to be the super speedy version of the video, so I'm only going to cover some of the basic points. I have a full-length version that is available for our patrons on our G.I. Joburg Patreon page, link in the description below. But let's get started. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure I got all my stuff ready for me. Got my acrylic paints, my Vallejo, and some Revell stuff. That's just to do some of the chipping whatevers. I'm not going to use the Tamiya Weathering Masters. I did bring them out, or did set them up thinking I was going to use them, but ultimately decided not to. I'm going to have a small brush and some kitchen towel there just to keep things clean for my brushes. That little lid from a soda pop bottle is for holding water. I'm going to grab some Q-tips and I'm going to get some Citadel Newland oil. Now, why do I like this? It's acrylic. It's not toxic. It's safe for you to use. It's safe for your kids. It's also safe for the toy. If you don't do a lot of customizing or you're not familiar with the plastic or whatever, some solvents can actually hurt plastics. Now, Citadel is great because they make their product for miniatures. Miniatures are handled all the time, and that's the other reason I like to use it for toys, because it is quite robust. It can handle being touched and moved and being stuck in articulation and that kind of thing. Personally, I never use it on model kits ever, but I think it's great for toys. Plus, it being water-based makes it a lot easier for cleanup and a lot easier for my processes here, where we're going to use a little bit of water and a touch of rubbing alcohol, but that's only a little bit later. And you'll see as I'm applying this wash, I'm not being too careful, but I'm also not being too sloppy about it. I'm trying to find places where I can give the toy a bit of contrast. And I'm definitely trying to find those nooks and crannies. I want to bring out the detail. That's my goal with this guy right now, is bring out the detail, but in a realistic way. I don't want a sort of anime aesthetic of every line being uniformly black. I just want a feeling of dirt that's been caught in the crevices of this toy. This guy has been on missions in the city. He's been subjected to grime and smog and all of the stuff that comes with an urban landscape. And of course there's tons of rain, and that's just washing everything down even further, so it's making it even more of a murky mess. It's giving our armor some texture, and that's one thing I also love about Citadel, is that it has a bit of a, I don't know if this is actually intentional, but it's got a bit of a texture to it, which is not obvious. It's just enough to give it some life, and I dig that. And so, speaking of gravity, I am brushing from the top to the bottom. So I'm starting on the top of the toy. Generally, starting on the top of any of the parts. So you might see me start on the thigh, but I'll try my best to start on the top. Here in this case, we're around the collar and the back. What's also cool here is that I know it's going to be covered up, so I can actually be a little bit more sort of experimental with some of the sort of flicks and flacks that I'm doing with my brush. Just want to get a bit of a feel in them and see what I'm going for. And yeah, of course I'm rubbing it off with my fingers. Great thing about it being acrylic is that it's not toxic to me to do that. Not that solvents are that bad, but some people are allergic, and it is a thing. I haven't tried other acrylic washes. I've just found Citadel to be great for me, although I am keen to try out some of the Vallejo products, well, the Vallejo wash products, as well as the MIG acrylic wash products. But for now, I'm super happy with Vallejo because I bought this bottle like 4 years ago and it has been great. So as you can see in this section here, I am getting into the crannies there. I'm sort of making a splodge, letting it dry for maybe a second or two, and then dragging it down. It's something that you'll get a feel for, but I definitely feel that it gives the toy the character it needs, as opposed to, you know, going horizontally with your strokes. And as you can see, I'm going vertically or diagonally down, and only every now and then horizontally, just to sort of maybe clean up a streak that I don't like, trying to make sure that my dirt has a good design. And there you have it. I mean, look how cool that's looking already. And now for the hyperspeed version. Ta-da! Hey guys, as you start getting to the point where you've fully covered it or fully done your wash, you want to grab yourself a Q-tip, especially while the wash is still sort of fresh, and just sort of use like a bit of a dry wipe. So you're using the Q-tip to just sort of clean up the raised sections, stuff that wouldn't really get grime. I enjoy doing this. This is one of my favorite parts of the process, because here you get to really sculpt the dirt. Oddly enough, right? But this is where you get to make the dirt look like dirt and not just a dirty toy. And then what you want to do is, once you've sort of done your dry wipe, if there's surfaces or areas that you wish to clean further, a bit of water with a dash of dishwashing detergent is going to definitely help clean up those hard to reach sections or the tough dirt. I sound like a detergent commercial. Not really, but anyway. And you'll see that what I'm doing is I'm just going on some of the areas that I just feel are not really going to get dirt, or I feel are too dirty, because I believe maybe service technicians or service personnel, or even the user himself, has had to touch those areas repeatedly, and has possibly wiped off the dirt. I mean, these guys are some form of a military, so, you know, they do try to keep their gear clean. It is a uniform. And here we go, guys. This is him with just a wash. That's it. You can leave your Ammobot at this point. That's enough. 1-point technique, and he looks amazing already. Now we're going to get into some chipping. So what I'm using here is a Vallejo acrylic. More detail in the Patreon video, because it requires a little bit more thought. But yeah, stick around, check it out. You can see I'm just hitting some of the areas that would most likely or probably be clanked by, I don't know, debris, dustbins, boxes, vehicles, the mech itself, hitting itself. And I do this sort of a stippling technique, so I'm not necessarily just trying to paint in details, I'm painting in little dots. And then every now and then I feel brave enough and streak it a little bit, and that could be a stray rock or a stray bullet or whatever. Either way, whatever it takes to make it look cool. Now guys, bear in mind, we're trying to avoid a Tonka truck look here. Okay, so we don't want this thing to look all completely bashed up. We want to have some kind of design, some kind of purpose to what we do. And I'll explore that kind of thing in future videos as I cover these topics, or each of these topics individually in detail, for different sort of applications, and so that you can get behind my mindset. But I just find just seeing somebody else doing it definitely adds a lot. It fuels the imagination, it fuels your brain. Your brain starts getting ideas on how to do things, and you get going for it. Now, I know that when some of you are watching this now already, you're going, wow, but he's making those like gashes so big, and you know, they should be smaller and that kind of thing. And you know, you are right, but this is a small toy. This is a 3¾ inch, almost 4-inch action figure, and I want these chips to give it a bit of contrast. So I am making them a bit more, I suppose I'm characterizing it more. I'm accentuating it a little bit more than normal, so that they pop out. But you'll notice that I don't ever use silver. I hate using silver for weathering, because I just find that takes us into the Tonka truck sort of broken Hot Wheels look. In fact, actually, it's the chipped Hot Wheels that gave me the idea to use a sort of a lighter gray for these things. And this is like a pale gray that I'm using, that I also use on my Gundam kits, and I find that it works really, really well, especially because this is just the first application. After this, I'll be applying sort of different colors in between that gray, and that's going to also soften it a bit more. That's going to get it looking a bit more natural, and a lot less sort of toyetic, and a little bit more realistic. Or let's not say realistic, let's say believable. Now, one of the easiest things to hunt down when it comes to doing any kind of chipping is raised edges or corners. Anything, even if it doesn't seem like it would be hit by debris or something, just it being handled on a workbench or in a storage locker, that kind of thing is always, there's always going to be chipping on this kind of stuff. And you don't have to look far. I mean, if any of you guys have diving gear or have been to a diving rental before, you can see the air tanks always have a little bit of a chip or a little bit of something on them that maybe the guys have repainted over it. So, you know, look around you, look at realistic things, not necessarily Google searches, although I fully encourage you to. But try to actually see these things for yourself in real life, and find out how you can translate them into your chipping. So I've moved on to a darker paint now, and that's to give it some variation. And my wash didn't work on these cool eye slits here, so I just painted them in manually. So you just hold your breath and then you pray. And yeah, and then I just go in with the darker stuff, and I'm going over the lighter chipping with the darker gray, with the darker paint. And that's giving it some variation. That's also allowing me to design the chip a little bit more, so that it just comes across a bit more realistically. It's also a great color for contrast on these, on the sort of light meat here, on these lighter gray plastic parts. You know, we can get that realistic sense. And there's something I'm doing that's also a little bit naughty. You may have seen it before. I'm actually painting into the crevice, so it's not necessarily a chip. I'm actually painting in a bit of a shadow there. So yeah, there's no hard and fast rules. It's not like, oh, you're going to use this paint exclusively for chips. If you feel that there's an area that you can darken and the wash didn't get there, or you want to add some visual flair to it, by all means, get your brush in there. I'm using a very fine point brush. I think it's like a 00 or a 000 Kalinsky model brush thingy that is decent. It's not the high-end market sort of brush, and that's okay with me, because I love how these brushes sort of sometimes mess up and they get like like a bit of a snake tongue. And there you have it, guys. I mean, you know, that's the chipping from a distance, and So I'm going to allow that paint to dry and then just focus on some of the accessories here a little bit. And you'll see if I'm not happy with it, I very quickly will shove it off with my finger. Okay, I will very quickly wipe that paint off. And that can actually be very useful in the sort of in your end game, because that little bit of paint wipe once again adds to the texture and detail of what you're painting and what you're working on. So I'm pretty sure this is obvious to you now. With the holster, all those parts there are going to totally get banged up. This is something where a hand is always sort of connecting with it, so it's okay to sort of, I don't want to say over weather it, but it's okay to give it a little bit more attention than the whole armor. This creates contrast. Having parts of the toy with more chips and whatever's than other parts creates a story. And yeah, I suppose I should mention some stuff about making mistakes. I'm going to take the sort of approach, or the happy cloud approach here. If you make a mistake, try to see if you can turn it into, well, try to see if you can own that mistake, rather. Try and see if you can turn it into something inspirational or whatever. But if that's failing you and you've really made a quote-unquote mistake, a little bit of rubbing alcohol on a Q-tip can remove this paint super quickly. So no stress there. So here's my handy sponge. We're going to do some sponge chipping. Yeah, make sure you clean that sponge. So dip it in the paint and dab it until there's literally no paint on it, until it feels like there's no paint on it. And sort of attack the surface. So with your knowledge of being able to remove it with some alcohol, some rubbing alcohol, you should have no fear when you attack shapes like this. Just really get in there. Unfortunately, the lighting here was not in my favor, but you can see how this sponging technique really creates that sort of great worn chipping sort of aesthetic. Now, I usually save the sponge for the end. It's not, I know a lot of guys like to start off with it. I don't, because I feel that it's very quick, it very easily overwhelms what you're doing. And so once I have some chipping established, I actually like to use the sponge to put some juice into that chip. So you'll see as I'm going along, I'm very lightly dabbing it. Like in that case, I didn't like that, so I wiped it off with a clean spot of the sponge and just going nuts on this. And being quite light with it, not sort of dragging it or being rough, just patting it. I think the best way to explain it is you're trying to get paint, you're trying your best to get paint on, but not a lot of it. And so you have to get a feel for that. And I like to dab it just a little bit lightly all over the place. Even if you may not see it on camera, it is definitely visible on the toy itself, and it gives it some character. So guys, there we go. That's how cool our Ammobot looks with all of the chipping and sponging and wash. It looks great. Really looks dirty. Looks amazing. I think this is worth buying the toy for alone. If I get my hands on another one of these, you can bet that I'll be weathering it. I'm actually more excited about weathering these and painting them up than I am with playing with them. So yeah, maybe that's a motivational factor for you. These are unfortunately difficult for me to get my hands on, so sadly, unless they find their way into store shelves here, I think this will be the last one I get to do. But yeah, there we go. Ammobot with weathering, one-shot pull technique.